I have lived in this house since I came home as a newborn, as did my mom before me. My son came home here, but I'm happy that we're leaving. The neighbors next door were wonderful when they first moved in. The husband worked with my husband and the wife stayed home like me. It wasn't long before we started having coffee on Mondays, sitting in my yard, watching my goats graze. I wouldn't say we were bosom buddies, but there was a friendship. So much, in fact, that I routinely pet sat while they were away. It wasn't long before I noted inconsistencies in stories of her past. 9 years my elder, she told me of her abusive family, whom she hadn't seen in many years and wouldn't know how to find them if she wanted. In the same week would show my photos her sister texted her of a niece she had never met, except on occasions when she did. Some days, her childlessness was due to an overbearing mother having her tubes forcibly tied at 16. Other days, it was a medical condition. I ignored the red flags, assuming moving across the country had left her wanting for friends and prone to embellishment. I became pregnant, something my husband and I were ecstatic over, and that's when things changed. She would slip up and say things like, "When is my son going to be born?" Or, "I can't wait for you to meet my little boy." When pushed, she would just say it was a slip of the tongue. I distanced myself as much as you can when your neighbor can see you literally any time you step outside. My son arrived late one February night. He was 6.9 pounds of pure perfection, although I might be a bit biased. We didn't tell anyone except family, who did not know the neighbors, and since he was born on a weekend, my husband never informed his co-workers. We came home to gift bags, eerily soggy from rain, sitting on the steps. They felt wrong, somehow, sullying the joy we felt. Inside was a card detailing the love she felt for our child, and how she would always be watching him. It might have been hormones, but I felt sick. The next time we saw her, she was referring to herself as Auntie and your sister. I'm an only child, and that phrase crept up my spine like spiders. She yelled at my husband for not allowing her to take her baby to town to show her cousins. He was 3 days old. Since then, they have moved out of the house next door, but she has sat in the driveway, watching to see if I come inside. Several nights in a row, our 2 dogs have barked, and I've gone outside to find our livestock has been let loose. 37 rabbits, 68 chickens and ducks, 23 goats, all loose. We have locks on the gates, but can't lock individual pens due to the setup. Game cameras haven't shown us anything except a figure in the rabbit barn. I think it's her trying to create enough chaos outside that both my husband and I have to tend to it, leaving our son sleeping inside. He and I have one rule. One of us has eyes on the baby at all times. If we're both busy, my mom sits with our son. We're currently trying to buy a house with more land, and I hope we get it so that we can stop hiding in our own yard, since the local PD doesn't think there's a problem. One night, we woke up at about 2:30 a.m. to the sound of the door in front rattling. We lived in a 24-foot camper. Well, my son's bassinet is directly against the door because the door is broken and locked, and my son was nursing in bed with us anyway. My husband grabbed his Taurus Judge, a .45 caliber revolver, for those of you who aren't aware, and started putting on his boots. Well, 2 windows on this thing were broken and are covered in bags to keep the weather out. And he said he saw an arm come through the window nearest the bassinet, feeling around for something. So what does he do? He eases up and whacks the crap out of the disembodied arm in the dark with a pry bar we had in the bathroom since we're replacing the shower. Once he got outside, I had called the cops, who took 38 minutes from my phone call to arrive. My mom lives next door and came outside when she heard my husband and neighbor's husband both yelling at the neighbor. Apparently, he woke up to the sound of her car leaving and followed her, since he has been informed of the issues. I feel bad for this guy. He was completely browbeaten, and I think he has tried getting her help. He was crying, begging her to take her medication, which we didn't actually know she had. My mom took my son so I could talk to the cops. This woman actually tried to file an assault charge on my husband and tried to explain how my son was hers, so she deserved visitation. The cops told her, "You're in a castle law state. I've done this multiple times here, and you'd better be happy all he did was hit your arm, because he was within rights to shoot you through the door." But was she arrested? Nope. The cops called her husband to take her home. I wanted to file a restraining order, a no trespassing order, or anything. Nope. She wasn't being violent or destroying property. So evidently we can do something when she escalates it to the point where we're in danger. And then, half an hour after I call, they might do something. I guess that's why everyone says, if you want to get away with murder, move to this county. So today we're touring another house and hopefully making an offer. So, when I was around 6 years old, I'm 23 now. Just before starting school, I had to stay at my grandparents' place for around 6 months due to my parents' constant traveling for work. It happened in Europe, a little country called Lithuania, which is a really cool and modern country with very fast internet, and living in blocks of flats by the year 2000 was pretty much normal. My grandmother lived in a block of flats, a 5-story building in a peaceful community neighborhood. My grandmother was working as a nanny at the time, and she had one more girl who was from Washington in the United States staying with us. Me and the girl were playing outside, and we noticed a man in a brown leather jacket and brown pants lingering around the block and the entrance of our block of flats. Being kids, we didn't pay much attention to him or find any of his behavior suspicious. I remember passing him by the time we had to go home, and him holding the door for us. He had dark hair and these almost neon blue eyes. My grandmother's flat was the last, on the 5th floor. The 3 of us are having dinner when my grandfather, who at the time was working night shifts at the local billiard club, was leaving for work. So we have dinner, say goodbye to Grandpa, and we're off to bed. Mind you, back then nobody locked their front doors of their apartment or house, because everybody knew their neighbors and trusted them in the time of need. My grandmother is telling a bedtime story, and it's already dark outside in late August, when we hear 3 muffled sounds as if furniture's falling. My grandmother rushes to lock the door for some reason. Okay. She tells us probably somebody's redecorating and moving their furniture. We fall asleep. Fast forward to the next morning. My grandfather is coming back from work. It's around 6 a.m. He finds the front door open of the apartment that belonged to a family living on the 3rd floor. He walks in and finds a dead grandmother and a boy who was around 5 years old, and also his friend, dead, with gunshot wounds. Me and the girl are immediately woken up. There's police everywhere. We were asked if we saw anything suspicious, or any suspicious people not from our neighborhood. Of course, we remember the man. Later on, he was found guilty of that particular murder, and it was all over the local newspapers. Since then, everybody I know, including myself, locks our doors. And creepy murderer, let's never meet again. When I was about 15 years old, I was heading home from the train station. I lived on a military base, and it was a 15 to 20 minute walk. I had just reached the entrance to a long, dark, and narrow alley when I heard the sound of music and a car approaching me from behind. I moved as close to the walls as possible to allow the car to pass me, but they ended up turning slightly sideways and cutting me off. I stopped, and a man came out of the driver's side and looked at me at the opposite side of the car. He was an African American man who spoke perfect English. He attempted to greet me in poor Japanese and then asked to be my friend in English. I'm Japanese and probably looked local to them, but I was in fact born and raised in America, so I pretended that I didn't understand what he was saying to me. He slowly started to make his way around the car towards me, but I remained in sync with his movements and backed away in the opposite direction from him. This amused him, and he started laughing loudly and taunting me.
"You're afraid of me? You're afraid of me."
I sheepishly put my hands up in front of me as I continued to back away towards the front of the car. Some light illuminated the inside of the car, and my eyes rested on the face of another man in the passenger seat. The man outside saw my eyes shift away from him and made a lunge at me. I was still just out of his reach, and I shot off, sprinting down the alley. The man ran back to the door and jumped into his car. I heard the tires screech as he reversed out of the alley. At this point, I thought maybe they were going to leave me alone, but as I neared the end of the alley, I heard the music from their car getting loud once again. The car reaches me at the same time I get out of the alley, and I run right past it and slip through some bars where only pedestrians are allowed to go. I can see the lights and fences at the gate to the base, and I'm relieved. I'm finally safe. Or was I? It never dawned on me at the time, but a few weeks later, I realized that the man was an American and very close to base. He must have been a soldier and tried to take advantage of the Japanese local girls that find shame in rape. He probably didn't realize that I was an American until he saw me run through the gate. Nothing ever came of it, but how many times could I have passed him in the commissary or the PX afterwards? From 2006 to 2011, I worked in the electronics department at a local Walmart in the small city I lived in. Through those 5 years I had worked there, I had plenty of creepy encounters with strange customers, especially considering the state hospital was directly across the road. This story isn't just a regular old creepy encounter, but something that would lead me to be stalked for nearly a year. It all started in 2010 on a night I was working second shift. I was doing my end of shift ritual when a woman in her late 40s interrupted me. She was with a little girl who was no more than 3 or 4. "Excuse me, I need help with my cell phone," she spoke softly. She proceeded to tell me her problem. "I need to turn my phone into a straight talk phone. The girl earlier said you could do that." Of fucking course she did, I thought to myself, but my lips said, "Sure, let's see what I can do." She handed me a 6-year-old phone from Verizon, and I knew as soon as I saw it that I would not be able to do what she wanted. I explained that she would have to buy a new phone from Straight Talk and transfer her old number. Basic shit, really. Now, I always took my job seriously and held myself to the highest standard of customer service. I would often receive letters to the store from customers complimenting me. So I assure you I did nothing to actually piss off this lady, but she sure as shit was pissed. "Why the hell would I buy a new phone? I already have one!" she screamed at the top of her lungs. She then claims that I'm upselling her and that I'm a corporate goon. I finally managed to defuse the situation, and as she left the department, she gives me the classic, "You'll never get a job in this town again." As I'm ready to leave my shift, my manager stops me and tells me I got a complaint at customer service from a lady claiming I swore at her granddaughter. Apparently, I told her to fuck off. I explained what happened and he just laughed it off. My managers knew it was very unlike me to say anything like that to a customer. I wish the story ended there, but then again, if it did, I wouldn't be writing this. For the next several weeks, I would get complaints about things I had never done, sometimes even on my days off. I would come into questions from management nearly every day, It was complaints ranging from me being rude to a customer all the way to me doing drugs in the parking lot on break. All these complaints were coming from two women. As it turned out, it was the cell phone lady and her adult daughter. It turns out they had even been scoping out my work schedule and started coming in nearly every day. They would walk through electronics to make sure they saw me, and later that night I would have a complaint. This happened for months. It happened so much that management deemed her my favorite customer. To be honest, I didn't care much. I actually thought it was pretty funny. I never got into trouble, and everyone knew these ladies and just blew it off. I started caring when she took it to a new level. She started to follow me around. I would see her walking around town. She made it clear she knew where I lived and would regularly walk by my house. I would see her standing out in front, just looking at my place. I began getting complaints to the city about my property. The grass was too tall, the old shed in my yard, my fire pit, basically everything. She even found out my girlfriend's name and began complaining at her job. I knew it was her. She would make it so clear that she was following me. Sometimes she would stop in and ask questions at work and act like the nicest customer. A few times she asked me things like, "How's your girlfriend?" Or my favorite, "How can you afford that big house and your little Walmart wage?" For about 7 months she stalked and slandered me. I started telling her I knew what she was doing and that she needed to stop. But she played it off. I couldn't report her. She never once threatened me. She was just making my life hard. By this time, everyone in my life knew about this nut job. One night, I'm grabbing dinner with my friends from work and we're joking around when somebody says, "What if you just counterstalk her?" At first, I thought this was a terrible idea, but they convinced me that it would work and they would all help me out. So we hatched a plan like something you would read on r/probe revenge. It went as follows. Find her job, find her name and address. Make complaints in the same manner as her. Find out all the rumors she's told about me. Make it clear that we know. Show her that we have numbers. I found her information easily enough. Turns out she didn't live anywhere near me. I was even friends with a few of her coworkers. They would keep me informed on crazy shit she said about me and even told her to stop. We began doing exactly what she was doing to me. We did this for about 4 months. The more we dug into her life, the more I found out about how obsessed she was over getting me into trouble. She claimed that I had assaulted her. She urged others to report me and follow me. She told police I was a potential drug dealer. Eventually, we won though. She started putting together that there were 6 of us digging into her life and asking questions about her. My last month at work, I didn't get a single complaint. In fact, I never even saw her anymore. The day after I quit though, I heard she was in the store complaining about a new person after asking one of the managers why I quit. I'll honestly never understand why she was so hell-bent on destroying me. I just told her to buy a $20 prepaid cell phone.